Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Miller's Military Moments where I'm your host, Jason Miller, Master Sergeant Retired, and this is where you can hear all about my stories and other veterans' stories through their time of service in the Army or their particular military branch. Our mission here is to connect our veterans and our civilian counterparts together through our stories. We've got some pretty exciting things going on with the podcast, building a community, bringing us together, civilians and veterans, and not only through the podcast but through our Patreon page, our website, and our Discord. And if you're not familiar with the Discord, essentially it's a communication app or tool, and you can use it on the computer or an app. And we have a private Discord server just for fans of the Patreon page for Miller's Military Moments, where basically veterans and civilians, so that we can continue to learn about each other, share our stories, and you can text chat, you can voice chat, and you can do video chat in there. And our lowest tier in Patreon, the sergeants, and they $5 a month, you get access to the Discord, and you can contribute and talk and chat to people in there. So it's pretty exciting, and it's a great opportunity for all of us to get to know each other better and share our stories and grow this community. One podcast, one text, one Discord message at a time. So definitely check that out. And again, the best place to find me is my website, www.millersmilitarymoments.com. And there you can find the link to the Patreon, you can find the link to the Twitter, you can listen to the episodes or find the links to, the Apple Podcasts or wherever you would like to listen to it, plus the YouTube channel. And also, if you want to just go direct to the Patreon page, you can go to www.patreon.com/Miller's Military Moments. And again, the link's on my website if that's too much to remember, and no big deal. But you can go there, and I also publish Patreon-only posts and videos, and there's some bonus episodes too. So on the Patreon. So there's a lot of extra content there as well. But definitely it's still, all about just really building this community up and, continuing our mission of bringing the veterans and the civilians together through our stories. So definitely check it all out. All right. Hey, so Season 2, Episode 2, Leadership Challenges and Building Up a CAB, a Combat Aviation Brigade. So a lot's going on, and if you're new to the show, thanks for tuning in. I definitely appreciate it. This is a continuing show, so some of this, listeners prior to will know a lot of this stuff, what this is about. So I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to the previous episodes to kind of catch up, because it's a continuation of each story from week to week. So we're in, really the fall of 2004, and we ended, last week's show talking about me getting promoted and, the unit going through a lot of change, and, so what does that mean for us moving forward? What does a deployment look like coming up? And so there's a lot of big changes, but really that fall of '04, for me, so I got promoted and now I'm a sergeant, and I talked a little bit about how, that is the most difficult promotion in the Army. When we go from what we call them a junior enlisted, so you're an E4, and you can be an E1, 2, 3, and 4. That's an enlisted pay grade is what it is. But when you make that jump to sergeant and you are a non-commissioned officer, you are responsible for people, you're responsible for maintenance, you're responsible for equipment. There's a lot of assumptions made by people when they see you and they see that rank on you. So they assume, you know what's going on, you have the answers, or you can find them, you're going to lead them, all those types of things. So, but it's not like when you get promoted. So we talked about the pinning ceremony. When you get pinned and the rank is on you, all of a sudden the light bulb comes on and you know all this stuff. It is definitely not like that. Now, for me, I was promotable for quite a while. I think it was 16 months or something. So, I was preparing myself, here and there, trying to learn from the people that were other NCOs around me, and talking about how I would do things or what I would do. And but I hadn't officially gone to the leadership school either. So which honestly doesn't teach you a whole lot. And unfortunately, 20 years later, it still doesn't teach us a whole lot. So I ended up going to that leadership school for that rank, a sergeant, in the spring of 2005. And so schools started to get a little bit more challenging to attend, not that the curriculum was more challenging, due to deployments and being gone for 12 months at a time. So there's a lot of backlog of trying to get people in certain places. So, and we realized we had to start growing the Army. So now there's, a lot more people trying to, get promoted and stuff. But, so yeah, I get the rank pinned on, but it doesn't mean I just have all of this, information and knowledge. So I have to try to, learn as much as I can now. Another interesting thing too is like, so at work in those early days of being an NCO, I don't remember us having like a lot of computers and network access. I know I definitely didn't have a work computer. I don't know that I had computer access till maybe sometime later at Fort Hood. But so at home, I had the internet, and it's, I don't know, I'm not saying it's in its infant stages, but it was, there's not a whole lot out there, but I did do a lot of my paperwork that's required from a non-commissioned officer at home, and writing my counselings, and which is stuff we do it almost monthly, where we talk to our soldiers, and we're supposed to do it monthly. Let me clarify that, or whatever the First Sergeant decides. Some of them do it every 90 days, but anyway. So I would type those up there, print them at home, and then I would take them, because it was just too hard to find a computer or find a printer at work. And then they just looked better than just being, handwritten and stuff. But, another interesting thing I was thinking about too just now is, looking forward, 9 months from then, I got my first evaluation report, and it was all the signatures were handwritten signatures, which, I don't know, I can't remember. Maybe the next one after that was digitally signed with our ID cards. But yeah, so that was kind of interesting. The early days of maybe not having a whole lot of technology, but yeah. So being a sergeant, and now I'm in charge of people and equipment, and it's definitely different and a challenge. So specifically, let's talk about like being in charge of these people, and like, what do I do? So the first thing is like, look, these were my peers the day before. These were my friends, and now I'm in charge of them. So, like I think I talked about in the last episode, the infantry and other branches of the Army, they do a really good job of moving their people when they get promoted to a different unit, because when you show up to that unit with that rank on, you're just known and perceived as, Sergeant Miller, not, well, he just got promoted to sergeant. I know him as specialist. And so, but aviation, we just don't. Sometimes there's good reason. There's maybe not necessarily a spot for you. We often are more technical than we are tactical or discipline-wise, so it's not necessarily that big of a deal. But sometimes it can just be a pain when, again, I was their friend the day before, and then now I'm in charge of them, and, it always works out well in the beginning, right? Like, of course they support me. They're like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, he's not going to tell us to do something stupid because, he knows he wouldn't want to do it, or, or if he's telling us to do something, it's because somebody else is telling him to tell us to do something. So in the beginning, those things do work out well, and then, but over time, that kind of maybe friendship slash support kind of does kind of wane, and then there's that little bit of, gosh, you're such a a jerk, just like those other sergeants were. That can come out sometimes. But that's that's the responsibility I took by taking the rank, and I never tried to do anything unethical or immoral, and I don't think I did. Always try to just do the best I could. But yeah, so it's definitely interesting with that. And then, another thing that was really hard in aviation was that I honestly did not have as much maintenance experience as probably 80 to 90% of the people that I worked with, honestly. Maybe 70%, I don't know. But regardless, most of them had more maintenance experience than me. They were better at phases than I was. But now I'm in charge of them. So, there's a little bit of that animosity of, you don't even know what we're doing or how to do it. So how can you be in charge of us and tell us what to do? And, I don't necessarily disagree with them. And it, makes it a little bit hard sometimes to kind of deal with. And then when I'm, asking them to do stuff or whatever, and they're like, well, we can't do it like that because that's not how it works, or we need more people. And if you had more experience, you would know that. Sometimes, but not all the time. I mean, generally they worked with me really well. But there definitely was some animosity that I could feel from my peers because, I had a college degree, and that did count for a lot of like promotion points. Doesn't mean I was a good aviation mechanic or ready to be a non-commissioned officer in the United States Army. No, it didn't. But the Army said that it counted for a lot of experience and, quote, promotion points. So when we accumulate our points, there's different ways to accumulate points. So, and I know I talked about this several episodes ago, way back in season 1, about the Army promotion system. And, so our physical training test, our weapons score, going to Army schools, then our points for our actual promotion board appearance. So there's all kinds of points. And really, I'll kind of shorten all that up and say, in order to really get promoted, you just need to know the rules of the game. And that's almost in any career, in any life, right? So, you need to know the rules of the game in order to be able to play by those rules to get promoted. So that was one of the things that I really did early on in my career was I just wanted to know what the rules were, and then let me play by those rules and see if I can be the best player of that game. So I took advantage of some opportunities. I definitely took advantage of, me having a college degree when the platoon sergeant said, a couple years prior to this, hey, no one's going to the board unless you have a driver's license. I went out and got the driver's license. And then he was true to his word, and I went to the promotion board, in May of 2003, which was really early, to be honest with you, in my career. And then I got promoted, in September of 2004, which is like 37 months in the Army, which is pretty quick. I mean, pretty young. And, age-wise, I was, 27, about 27? No. 2004, I think I just turned 28, maybe, somewhere around there. Anyway, late 20s. So, I mean, maturity is definitely there, but it's tough sometimes, going back to the technical side. Well, and even the tactical side of the Army, like, going to the field and setting up, tactical assembly areas and tents and concertina wire and knowing how all that stuff works. Now I'm the NCO, and I'm supposed to know and supposed to lead people through, that. So there's, some of that animosity of, man, you don't know anything. You have a college degree, so you get promoted. And, so I just would have to kind of deal with it and, push that to the side and just be like, hey. And when I would talk to them, just be like, look, I don't know everything. I don't, assume that I know everything. And I don't want to ever come across to you that I do know it all. There's things that I might tell you to do because that's what I've been told to do, or I also know that it's the right thing to do, but as your leader, I will try to, I'll come to you guys and ask, like, hey, what is the best way to attack this problem or solve this issue? And I try to do that the best I could, and I think it came across pretty well. But those were definitely, some of the early challenges, of dealing with the people, and then, getting maintenance activities, different work orders and stuff. And like, well, I mean, I don't really know. So I'd have to, go talk to other people, like how to, come up with the best plan to figure it out. And then, when it comes to the maintenance activities, the NCO, so whoever's in charge, is responsible for either getting it done on time, getting it under budget, meaning, using the right parts and stuff, and don't wasting stuff and breaking stuff. And if your soldiers do any of that, it's your responsibility, right? Because you're supposed to be supervising. So, yeah, a lot of challenges there. And then now also dealing with like the people, as in, helping the soldiers, like helping them with their finances. If they have problems with their finances, or like the Army not paying them, the right amount, or they're supposed to get some bonus. So now I'm the first level contact to go and, solve those issues and help them and get them to the right place so that they can get the help they need. And a lot of offices in the Army like will not let a soldier come in there for business unless they have an NCO escort. So, this is, Specialist Snuffy, that's the name we use for like everybody. So Specialist Snuffy needs to go to finance to, talk about he got, not the right pay or something like that. And so they'll have signs up there that says, no NCO escort, don't come in, or something like that. So now, not only the soldier has to go up there, but the NCO has to go up there and, help them out. So now I'm starting to experience those things. Like I have things that I have to go do, but now I need to go take care of these soldiers and get them, taken care of and get their issues, squared away. So that's definitely, a new challenge. And if they have anything going on like in their life, a lot of times that they come to us. So I'm like the first one. Hey, Sergeant, can I talk to you? I'm like, yeah, sure. What's up? And, it could be my girlfriend just left me. My wife just left me. I have 2 flat tires. I can't even drive to work. My bank account's empty. I'm not happy with work. Like, how come I don't get to work on the helicopter? Why do I have to always go mow the grass? How come, I have to go drive the trucks and so gets to work on the helicopters? It just, so now you start to deal with all of that stuff, and you really have to try to see the big picture. You have to try to see, what is best for that soldier, your team, and the Army. There's a lot of things going in with that, and I'm here to tell you, look, I have not necessarily been trained to deal with that kind of stuff when we talk about it like as a social worker. You've got to be like a social worker, with your soldiers sometimes. And, so what I found to be successful is to just be compassionate, and then, listen and try to point them in the right direction. So, because a lot of times you can just listen and just have that empathetic ear and, be compassionate, say, I understand. I mean, that's challenge to get through, and then, show that you care, and, that you're not just some, rough NCO Army soldier behind the rank in the uniform and, we're all big, bad, and tough. So if you just show that you cared for a few minutes, a lot of times it'll go a long way to helping that soldier kind of find the resources that they need, or, be able to talk to their significant others, or figure out whatever their issues are, solve the problems that they're facing. So, but, everybody's different, and everybody is, even as a leader, is different, and it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. Some people, can do some of these things a little bit better than others naturally. I definitely have always been, more of a natural leader, like, in sports and in school. So some of this stuff did come natural. I was a high school English teacher, if you've, haven't heard my early story before I came in the Army. So definitely kind of that nurturing, I care, about you and your success attitude. So I think that did help, throughout my career as a non-commissioned officer for sure. Definitely in the early days when I was trying to figure out like just kind of my personality within that role. So, definitely. So another specific like challenge that came up. So the barracks during that time. So the Army would manage the barracks, meaning so the company would own so many rooms in that building, and the First Sergeant was responsible. First Sergeant and supply was like responsible for making sure the soldiers had the linens and making sure the refrigerators worked and all that kind of stuff, and they would coordinate for replacement items and stuff like that as necessary. Well, the Army decided that we needed to turn all of that responsibility and management over to civilians, which is not a bad thing. And so we were going through that process at that point. And so I had soldiers in the barracks, and a particular soldier, she had a refrigerator that died, it needed to get replaced, which it happens. They're like mini fridges or whatever. They're, I think it was like a mini fridge. It wasn't even a big full-size fridge. So definitely some of the rooms and equipment were smaller back then. And this is, 2004. So although our barracks are not very good today, they're a little bit better than they were back then. So we had to figure out like, okay, how do we get it replaced? Where do we go? And so, because at first we were like, okay, well, it's the civilian barracks guy. Like that's, they should do that, right? So I go down there, or she goes down there, and they're like, no, your NCO has to come and get it and go and replace it himself. And then, so basically they don't do anything. Like, okay. So, and none of us really knew that that's what the process was. We thought like the civilians took over and then that's it. They took over everything and they handled it all. So really all it was is one person managing like a building that would hand out the keys and make sure, he knew who was in what rooms and would process work orders for stuff that was wrong, but that was about it. So, and on the Army side, we're trying to figure out like, what does all this mean for us? Meaning the civilians take over the barracks. So here I am, new NCO, like, okay, so let's go up there, and then I have my truck, my brand new truck, and then we load this fridge in, and we take it over to the place where they said, this is where you turn it in, and then when we get there, they said, well, you need to have that representative, the civilian representative from your barracks office, here at the same time. And so you can't, turn this in. And it's also 3:30. So by the time you go get him and come back, we're closed at 4. So come back tomorrow, which actually we're closed tomorrow. And blah, 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 like on and on and on. And it almost, so the story they were saying was essentially my soldier was not going to get a refrigerator until like next week, let's say 5 or 6 days later. And I said, no way. I said, listen, I understand the rules now. I did not know before, but given everything that you've just said, let's figure out a way to take care of the soldier today. Like somehow, some way, give me that fridge right there that you're going to exchange for this, and I will sign some paperwork and I will take responsibility for it. I'll own it. I'll do whatever it is. Next week, I will figure out all the other stuff, but please, let's not let this soldier not have a fridge for like a week. And cooler heads prevailed, and they were like, okay, sign right here. You own it, but this means that you've got to figure out all the other processes. I'm like, okay, cool. Not a big deal. Get the fridge, get it back to her room. A couple soldiers come down and help her get the fridge up there. And of course, she was very, very thankful. But yeah, so that took a lot of time out of like my day, to figure out and coordinate all this thing. It was multiple trips to the barracks office, and then, finding this place. And so you can just imagine, while I'm out doing these things, I'm not at the hangar, either training soldiers or supervising maintenance or whatever the case is. So, yeah, it's tough, and there's a lot of things that are happening, and you've got to kind of figure out like what's my priority, and today, and it's not always clear, because typically, really, one thing you could always say is a clear priority is soldiers, right? Their health and welfare, making sure that they're taken care of, but if one starts taking too much of your time, then you've got to start reevaluating, because you've got 4 or 5. I mean, typically sergeants were in charge of 4 to 5, that are these others that are not getting your attention, and they could be, not being trained properly or not being taken care of and looked upon as like, well, he only cares about that one soldier and doesn't care about us. So, there's all kinds of things like that. And this particular soldier, she became very, very needy of my time. And it was getting, kind of absurd. Just, so much, like I had to spend so much time, helping with her barrack stuff, and then getting her to appointments. She didn't have a car and other things. And then there was an incident where we were driving in my truck, and, I was in the passenger seat, I'm in the driver's seat, and she starts talking about some inappropriate things, and I was just like, what? No, like that's inappropriate, please stop. Like, I'm very uncomfortable with you talking about that. And she just kind of kept going, like, well, it's okay, like, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, it is not okay. And I was like, almost like climbing out the window of the truck, like, oh my God, like, dude, stay over there. So we finished that thing. I got back to the hangar. I went to my boss, and I was like, dude, no more. Like, no more. Like, I don't want to be alone in the car with her. I don't want to be, anywhere that could even look like something inappropriate, because I don't trust her because of the things that she was saying and how she was coming across. And I was like, whoa. So what we did from then on is we found some other people to help get her to her appointments and stuff. And she had some big medical issues going on too, so she needed a ride. She couldn't drive anymore. Not that she had a car, I don't think, but anyway. So, yeah, here I am, a young NCO. I mean, I've been married a few years. I think, 7 by then. Yeah, 7 by then. I have a 2-year-old. Like, I'm not looking to get in trouble. Like, this is, So, yeah, I mean, that happened early on in my NCO career, and trying to figure that out, it's like, it's tough, because then you got to somewhere draw the line of, being a professional and, hey, I will do what I need to do to take care of my soldiers and take care of you, but I can't do it all. And at some point I got to cut it off, like, nope, this is inappropriate, and I'm not, going to listen to that and stuff. So that was definitely an interesting time, that first, fall. And then, and then kind of getting into the building up, a combat aviation brigade, and how and how that impacts me as a junior NCO, and getting ready to expand. And I talked about that a little bit, in the end of last show. So we're really going from, I think 48 aircraft to 110 aircraft, but also it's not just the number, it's the types. We're adding Chinooks, we're adding medevac. We're basically going to have like 48 Apache attack helicopters, versus 16 of those and 16 of the 58s. So, which the 58s were a smaller, reconnaissance helicopter. So, there's a lot of things that have to happen, and to include, the influx of people, equipment, and aircraft. And so we So one of the things, the Army has to do, they have to go out and start looking for all these aircraft, right? And figuring out, like, what's the timeline and the schedule for, Fort Hood. We were 4th Infantry Division. Like, when are we getting those aircraft? And then, of course, because what is our next deployment cycle? So I kind of mentioned that last show, too. Like, we've only been home for 6 months. But, we're already starting to hear that next year in late 05, we're going to go back. But that's why we've got to get all these helicopters, new ones. And I say new, they're not really factory new. Some of them were, a few of them were. But out of the 30, we had 10 old Alpha models, and then probably maybe 15 or so of the Lima models we originally had, and then we got maybe a few new Lima models. But heck, maybe the other 20 Limas were all previously certified, pre-owned, if that's what you want to call it. So, but anyway, they come from all over. So, the Army, big Army says, okay, we've got all these helicopters here and there, and we've got to, put them all to this next unit that's going to deploy. Then you've got to bring all these crews that can fly all these helicopters, and then all the people that can maintain these helicopters, and get them ready to deploy. And it's a huge undertaking. And so me as a junior NCO, how it impacted me was, hey, I'm still trying to get over to a flight company, which it looks more promising because there's going to be more flight companies and they need sergeants. And so I'm like, okay, man, this can be my chance. But one of the struggles for me was that my current unit liked what I did, liked what I was doing, and they typically, a good worker, they don't want to give you up, So and it's hard. And when you're in that support battalion, to be honest with you, the support battalion doesn't always receive, I just want to say, the most skilled or even experienced or best soldiers. So it's kind of an afterthought a lot of times. And so when they do get, good soldiers and NCOs, they like to hold on to them. Good or bad, that's just how a lot of organizations are, right? They don't want to let their good players go. So anyway, one of the first things that happened, so we got this aircraft that came from Honduras, and tail number 947. And it was going to the flight battalion, but we're in, support maintenance. So we need to do a phase on it. And it's an older medevac. It's an older medevac aircraft. And so it had the crosses on it and stuff. And, we had to get it repainted. So, but when we received it, when we got it from Honduras, they, flew it on a plane, and it was in pretty bad shape. I mean, just really bad shape. So, and listen, a lot of times what people do with any piece of equipment that they know that they're losing, a lot of times they just either push it to the end of the runway, push it to the end of the motor pool, and they let it sit there until it's getting transferred out, right? And so if you can imagine down in Honduras, the weather, the humidity, the salt down there, it just definitely does a number on all of the components of an aircraft. So, and they didn't wash it like they were supposed to. And so anyway, so here comes this aircraft. And so now I believe one of my teammates, who I'm hoping to actually have on a show coming up soon. So one of our NCOs, he was getting ready to get out of the Army, but I believe he was the original phase team leader. And then I kind of shadowed him, and then ended up kind of taking over as he, needed to focus on getting out. And I think he had a shoulder surgery at that point before he was getting out. So I kind of took over. But so this was not a normal phase. Remember, that's what we call the major maintenance activities, when we kind of overhaul the aircraft. And we were doing, a lot of those in Iraq. So a lot of us had experience, and we did have some new guys, but it didn't go as planned. It took a long time. It took a lot of money and a lot of parts and extra stuff that, normally does need to be replaced on a phase because of all of this damage that was done to it, through the weather and neglect and stuff. So it was taking months, and we replaced items on that aircraft that I think that's the only time I've ever done it. I've never replaced another one. The mixer on it, for all of you aviation guys out there, that's the only time I've seen that on the Hawk. And we replaced almost every dog bone. It's a component that's got a piece where there's like a oh, of course I'm going to forget the name of it, but where the hardware goes through but it moves around, and so it's got to be smooth, like a bearing, and but they were all like rusted and gouged, and it had like pieces of sand in it, so we had to replace like almost every one of those on the hydraulic deck. I think we replaced the main rotor shaft extension, which is just a part that goes from the transmission up to the main rotor hub. We replaced it, I think, twice. I think we had to get a new one, and then it was bad because when we inspected it, it had like nicks in the grooves, and it was just insane. And it got to the point where I believe the brigade commander ordered an estimated cost of completion, and it was something like over $2 million just to get this aircraft back up and running, which was an insane amount of money for a phase. I don't know if they were able to recoup that money from a different unit, from the Army. I have no idea. I just do what I'm told at that point, and try to fix it. So, but one of the frustrations was also, not to mention all the stuff we had to do, was towards the end, was Christmas, so December and Christmas time, and we have, I believe it was day on, day off schedule. And so, but we still had this stupid aircraft in that we're trying to fix. And so now we have to have an A team and a B team, and we're trying to, work, different days, but we need an NCO continuity. Well, I had actually taken leave earlier in December. And so when I came back through, block leave or whatever, holiday leave, I was the only NCO there. So, because a lot of times you have to kind of rotate, leadership to make sure somebody's there. But so I was the only one there. So it wasn't day on, day off for me. It was day on every day. And we were so overscheduled that Colonel McWillie came down and every day and checked on that aircraft. And I had to brief him on what the status was and what I thought, when we were going to be to the next step and complete. And it was rough. So I didn't get a whole lot of time off, that first Christmas as an NCO. And that was definitely one of my first, experiences of, working more because I'm an NCO and I have the responsibility. But, so, hey, that starts to take its toll on my family too, right? I mean, that's 2004, and I didn't retire until 2021. So that's just a small example of what it's like becoming an NCO. Like, your soldiers are going to get time off, but you may not. And so I didn't during that time. I had to work every day, which no big deal, whatever. That's just part of it. But it does build up over time, and even as NCOs, we need time off and time to relax and reset ourselves too. So that was a pretty big, one of my big maintenance challenges. And you just want it done. Like, come on, get this helicopter out of here. And another interesting story about that helicopter too was we had a maintenance test pilot, and this maintenance test pilot, he was a CW5 who was getting ready to retire. Like, this was going to be his last aircraft that he was going to do all the maintenance operational checks on and flight before he literally, walked off into the sunset or flew off into the sunset. This guy was a crew chief in Vietnam on Hueys, okay? And that's how old and crusty he was. But he was incredible as far as knowing and understanding the aircraft. And, another teammate and friend of mine who I'm also hoping to have on the show soon did a lot of MTFs with him in Iraq and would tell us about, like, he's sitting in the aircraft and the aircraft's running, and so the whole thing like vibrates, right? And it's a helicopter, like, that's what it does. And then the pilot, he'll be like, "You feel that? You feel that?" And my friend is like, "No, I don't feel that. You feel that vibration right there?" It's like, "No, it's the whole thing is vibrating. I don't know what you're talking about." So they shut down and they open up, what we called a broom closet, pulled off this area inside the cabin to look at some flight controls in this little area, and sure enough, he wiggled a piece, and this bearing was like out of tolerance. And it was like, how did you know? Like, how could you feel that as you're moving the controls? And, I mean, this guy was like just insane, crazy with the aircraft. But I mean, obviously good. I mean, really, really, really good. Everybody trusted, his judgment and, his ability to diagnose and fix this stuff. So it was really cool. So he was, with us on this aircraft. And as we start doing the maintenance operational checks, obviously one of the things that, sometimes is kind of annoying is that like he's so good that he's also so tedious and detailed. And it's like, oh, come on, sir. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, let's just, let's keep going, like keep moving forward. And he also wasn't living close to Fort Hood at the time. So we had to do a good job of scheduling with him when we were ready to run up and not waste his time. Or ours. So, because if he got there and it really wasn't ready, he'd be kind of upset. And he had, a lot of leeway and pull as a retiring CW5. So, and we got through it, but it was, yeah, I mean, it was definitely an experience. I mean, to finally get everything done, get the test flights done, and then get that thing out of there, like that was just, my first few months as an NCO in aviation, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, this is, stressful. And I'm just a junior NCO trying to figure it all out. And, as spring comes to, gets closer, then I'm going to get ready to go to the leadership school that doesn't teach us anything about leadership, by the way. And I think I talked about that before, but if not, I'll probably talk about it again, sometime. So, but yeah, so those were really some of my big initial challenges, after becoming an NCO in September of 2004, and, a couple of other big moments, in late November, right after Thanksgiving, my grandfather passed away. And so I was going home for the funeral and stuff. And at the same time, we had an aircraft go down from one of the flight battalions. It had hit a guide wire from one of the towers. And, nearby Fort Hood, it was heading up to inspect it was taking some passengers to go and inspect some vehicles that were in reset. And, everybody died. And so, but it was, pretty devastating. I believe there was like a CW5, a general on there, crew chiefs, pilots, a couple other people. So, pretty big deal, and so that happened in December-ish of 2004. And, then, again, we're still now we're still getting more aircraft, more people. We're trying to figure all this out. And, so a good friend of mine that is also going to come on soon, I do know he's going to come on soon, who arrived to Fort Hood around that same time. And he's already had one deployment to Afghanistan. And so he was there as we were building up the cab as well. And then I ended up joining, the battalion that he's in the following year of 2005. And we ended up serving together there, Egypt, and Riley, and so have known each other for quite a while, and we talk almost weekly now. So I'm really excited to bring him on too to share his perspective from this exact timeline that I'm talking about. So it's pretty cool, and he can talk about getting those aircraft in and getting all the crews trained, and it's tough. I mean, pretty big undertaking, really, to expand as much as we were expanding. And then, so here we are heading into 2005. And, so what's the situation? Are we, going back to Iraq, which we know we are? We're in Afghanistan. I mean, what is, Desert Storm only took like a week. So, like, what's the deal, and how many people are going to stay in? How many more people are coming in? In Vietnam, you just had to do one tour and then you were good. Like, that was it. You didn't have to go back again unless you volunteered. Well, in the volunteer army, there's no such thing. I mean, there was no such thing as a maximum number of deployments or months served or anything like that. Like, if you were still in, you were either deployable or you weren't. And if you weren't deployable, you most likely got, sent out of the army, either medically discharged or whatever. But so a lot of things are going on, and it's a pretty crazy timeline. And then hey, here's our families too, I'm trying to take care of my soldiers and their families, and then of course there's my family, my wife and son. We're trying to figure this out and develop those bonds and those relationships, and with our young son, and while dealing with all of this in the Army, and we're learning so fast that the Army comes first in everything, which is just as frustrating sometimes, but that's part of the playing, knowing the rules of the game and playing with those rules, and so it definitely gets tough. And then the thought of going away again is also just as tough, and figuring out what does that mean, what unit am I going to be in, where are we going to go, what are we going to do, but there's a lot more in between there to come. But again, just these are the things that are like on our minds as we're trying to train up for the next deployment and get all the new people trained, and everything. So it's definitely go and pretty challenging time. So, but here I am, a new NCO, and got the stripes on, and I'm at like 2000. So we're talking about 2004, late 4, early 5. My original contract ends in July of 2007. So, who knows? Like, I obviously am going to have to deploy again if we're leaving at the end of 05. And then, there'll be some long-term decisions like, are we staying in the Army? Are we out? What are we doing? So obviously I'm here and I just retired. Y'all know that. So y'all know the answer, but you'll know soon, like a lot of those thoughts and feelings and conversations as we've gone through it as a family and friends and teammates. It's a lot of stuff to talk about and to consider. So, yeah, so awesome. Well, thanks again for tuning in to, episode 2 of season 2 of my story. And, and hopefully you're enjoying, the progression up to the next deployment, and hearing about me as a new NCO. And soldier, leading people and taking care of equipment and stuff. It's definitely pretty crazy. So thanks again for tuning in. And hey, don't forget to check me out at www.millersmilitarymoments.com. Website has everything on it, and you can find all the links for there. But also Patreon. www.patreon.com/Miller's Military Moments. And that's where we're building this fantastic community, bringing the civilians and veterans together. Our mission is to connect our veterans and our civilian counterparts together through our stories. And that's where we're really doing it. We're getting to know each other better. We're sharing each other's stories, and we're connecting with civilians and veterans. So all of y'all are welcome to come join it and become at least a sergeant on my Patreon and become part of this community. We're really excited about it. And, we just welcome everybody to it and want to learn about each other and how we can bridge that gap between the veterans and some of our civilian counterparts. So again, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm so excited to bring these shows every week, and I'm just excited for the feedback and getting an opportunity to share my stories with you all. And thanks for enjoying them. Thanks for all the feedback. I appreciate it. And until next time, be kind, be compassionate, and be you. Peace.